Greetings, magnificent souls, to the Lily Bewley podcast, where we have open and honest discussions about ourselves. This is your host, Lily Bewley, and I'm honored to have conversations here with thought leaders, visionaries, healers, and even solo conversations with myself about things I am currently reflecting on. This is a place where we break down, break away, and break through our emotional trauma, allowing ourselves to be healthy, be happy, and live a peaceful life. We are tired of being sick and tired. We are tired, but we are not giving up. We know that there is something magnificent inside of us. And because we are fighting daily, hourly, and by the minute, fighting ourselves, our kids, our spouses, we have to do things differently. We have to break the cycle. We don't have a million chances. We have to be happy now. We have to find a way. So how do we do that? How is that possible? If you look around at what society is telling you, they tell you that what we're doing is impossible. Yet it's happening every single day. And it's happening through the practice and the love that we call awakening the magnificent soul. We are all magnificent souls, and these are our stories of healing. Today in episode 110, I welcome Ashley Stahl to the show to chat about taking a U-turn. And don't forget to let me know your thoughts about this episode or anything you would like me to cover on future podcasts at epiphanyvault.com. Remember, it is a safe place, and I would welcome the discussion. And also a request, if you are enjoying the show, please rate and share and review so we can get the word out to more and more souls who want to heal. My guest today, Ashley Stahl, is a counterterrorism professional turned career coach, speaker, and author. She's on a mission to help you step into a career you're excited about and aligned with. Through her 2 viral TEDx speeches, her email list of 500,000, her podcast, which is called U-Turn, she's been able to support clients in 31 countries in discovering their best career path, upgrading their confidence, and landing more job offers. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Ashley Stahl. Ashley, my friend, I'm so excited to have you here. It's going to be a great conversation today.
Thanks for being here with me too.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I read your book this weekend, or actually a couple weekends ago, called U-Turn. So I'm sure we're going to get in to that. And you focus more on career and personal development, but it did not feel like that to me. It felt like we were soul sisters on so many levels because you talked about your journey, your story, you talked about trauma. And I don't know a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know a lot of people in your niche that talk a lot about trauma and connect it to what you talk about, which is purpose and career development and job. So that is going to be interesting. I don't think I've ever had someone like that here.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I feel like your career is a matter of the heart and a matter of your self-esteem. And usually the results you're creating are either, especially in our career, the choices that we make sometimes come out of trauma, come out of tough life experiences, come out of moments where we had a hard conversation or a hard learning, and it impacts our career choices. It impacts our purpose. It impacts how we show up in our day-to-day lives. And so for me, it's always been kind of a mystery how career experts out there aren't deep diving into mindset, because it's so directly linked to career, especially self-esteem.
Yeah, 100%. That was something that I had to go through for sure. One of my big aha moment for me in my life was after I had checked off all of the boxes, doing what I was supposed to do, got the education I was supposed to get, the job, the money, the car, and all of the things, and still felt like that I was unfulfilled. I didn't know what was wrong, quote unquote, wrong with me, because I was so unhappy. And, I'm more on the relationship side of things when it comes to coaching, but it's the same idea. So I think it's super important to have these conversations because no one talks about this. At least from my generation or from our generation, it was this path that we had to go down. And there was really no question as to, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today, but nothing about oh, is this what you want, Lily? Is this what you want, Ashley?
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many moments I think that we get into autopilot and we don't really ask ourselves that basic question of do I even want this? The amount of times that I've had clients in my private practice or in an online program or even talk to someone who's been on my podcast or read my book, anything, the amount of times they've told me like, I'm so excited about this opportunity or this thing. And I'm like, oh, amazing. Why are you excited? Well, it's just going to get me here or get me there. I'm like, that's great. And how do you actually feel when you think about doing the job? How do you actually feel about the thing? And they're like,
Mhm.
well, I'm like, what are the daily responsibilities? What are the things that you're going to be doing? And that they're not so excited to actually show up in the day to day. And I think what we miss is that day to day is our life. That is what we're up to.
Yes.
That is how we spend our time. Our time is our life. And so I think this is why a lot of celebrities have little meltdowns, is because we set goals. We think we're going to feel a certain way when we get there. We chase the goal very intensely. And we think, and then we get there and we don't feel how we thought we would feel. And it's because we spent so many years and days and weeks showing up in responsibilities or skills that aren't really true to who we are or how we want to be using our energy in the world. And it's hard to be fulfilled when you don't like how you're spending your time every single day.
Yeah, 100%. Such a conversation that needs to be had. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, like that was me for a long time, is thinking, I don't think I had like, I don't think it was a conscious thing at that point, but it was just one of those things where, okay, this is the money that you need to make in order to feel happy, and all of that stuff. It's so good.
Yeah.
I have a question. So what is stuckness to you? I feel stuck is this word that travels around in coaching and personal development and stuff. And I think that maybe it's important to because part of what you do is to help people get unstuck. So I wanted to kind of lay some foundation as to what that means to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're never actually totally stuck. It's just your thinking that gets stuck. So a
Mm,
lot of the times, if somebody says, I'm stuck, what I'm really hearing them say is like, I'm stuck in a thought loop. I'm thinking the same thing,
mm,
and they're missing what's really possible for them in their lives. So I would say that's the first thing to realize. And the good news about it is that you can get unstuck. You can shift your thinking. There's a lot of power when you realize it's just about your thoughts. And a lot of the times I feel like we walk around and our peace is kind of disturbed and we feel off, and we haven't taken the second to ask ourselves, what am I thinking about that's making me feel this way?
mm,
And when we take that second and say, oh, we're thinking about that business deal or that business meeting, or I'm thinking about that friend in that situation, it's so important because you're able to kind of take a step back from it and say, like, do I want to be feeling this heavy about it? Do I want to feel this disturbed about it? Do I feel like this is authentic, like it deserves this level of thought from me? A lot of the times I'm able to shake something off and say, oh, wow, like that's not that big of a deal. I don't need to let that take me over right now.
mm.
Um, I get that sometimes you feel how you feel, and it's not really feeling like a matter of choice, but I do think a lot of the times you do have a choice, and it just starts with paying attention.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I get that. And yeah, sometimes I just don't, like I said, I don't really understand what people are talking about when they talk about stuck, but that helps. You also talk a lot about purpose,
Yeah.
which is, I feel like that's kind of buzzy right now too. I don't know if it has been and I've just been missing it or what have you, but I do know, like, one of my mentors always says that, like, if you Google what is my purpose, or there's been a lot of new a lot of new research coming out about people asking and really trying to find their purpose. So I'd love to hear your take on that, why it's
Yeah.
important. Yeah, just kind of what you think is important about purpose, because I do feel, yeah, it's just such a, again, a question that we are never posed with,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's such a big term, purpose. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that people miss is that purpose moves just like we do. We're living, growing organisms. We
Mhm.
shift. And I think talking about purpose like it's a destination is such a misunderstanding, because the truth of the matter is you just have a different purpose at any time of your life. Like the new mother's purpose is to have her baby. And, I remember when I got my puppy, it was like there was so much purpose, and like me clearing my calendar and just being with him and raising him. Um, and it's more than just motherhood, right? Like there's purpose in, like, maybe you want to be in an art class and you feel so much purpose making art. I think that tying purpose to money is a very slippery slope. You can have both. I believe that the workplace and the workforce is really a place where you can contribute. That's where I think the purpose is there, to contribute your gifts and to move the world forward in some way and to participate in society in a way where you're bringing your gifts, you're sharpening a skill set, and you're becoming better as a person and with the responsibilities you can take on because of that time you put in every day. I think there's purpose in just day-to-day life. And if you find a lot of purpose in your work, that's beautiful. But I think that we're looking in the wrong places. I don't think your work is the place for purpose. For me, I tend to have a lot of purpose in my career, but that's because I focused first on just being who I am. Who I am as a communicator, that's the skill I want to contribute to the workforce. It just so happens that I communicate about fulfillment. And so as a result, there's a lot of purpose in helping other people with that. But as a communicator, maybe there's somebody listening who's also a communicator and you want to communicate about, archaeology or art or something you're interested in. You want to take that skill you have and you want to pair it with an interest like art. There's a lot of purpose in that. There's a lot of contribution in that. So yeah, I think that there's just a lot of misunderstanding about what it really means to have purpose. And there's a lot of fear around experimenting and allowing yourself to find something that is true for you. What we're doing right now in people's careers is pretty much the equivalent of saying, in preschool, like whoever your first crush is, marry them, and that's what we're doing with our career. We're like, pick one thing, grow it and marry it. And you can't change it, or you have to feel shame if you want to change it, or if you invested in it, or you got a degree in it and you don't want to do it. There's so much pressure there, and it's not really compatible with the realities of being a human being who's discovering themselves. Like finding out who you are is really a calibration with the universe, and it requires a lot of trying on and taking off with careers.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Such a good point, because that's like so many things really came up for me while you were saying that. And for me, it was, knowing like the pain, and I'd love to hear about your story too, if you're open to sharing it, but like the pain of my story. And I knew when I kind of like realized that there was something different like available, which I had no idea, like the day that I realized that something, that could be different, I knew that was the direction that I needed to go, is to communicate that. Because why, like I just kind of felt like I was stuck in this hole for the longest time. And I didn't know how it was going to look. But then eventually, I think this was a recent thing for me in the last, like maybe, I've had my business for 2 years, but in the last like year or something like that, I realized that at my core, like what you're talking about, which is what you talk about in your book, like at my core, I'm loving, caring, and kind.
Yeah.
But the path that I had been walking, like, that corporate path, and not to say that corporate is bad, but I wasn't tapped into my core skills, I guess you could say, or you have different terminology, but that was the disconnect for me, is that I didn't realize, I thought I had to be someone else in order to make money, someone else, which is like in relationships, like all the things, all the sacrifice, right? Like I thought I had to be someone else to succeed, to make $1 million, to, all of that stuff. But that has been, I'm not there yet, but that has definitely been a coming home for me, for sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've had a lot of reflection lately on people who do things that aren't in integrity with them. And it's not about anything being wrong. It's just what's integrity for you, as far as like what means something to you, what fulfills you. And I found that we live in a world right now where a lot of people are in different jobs where they can feel some darkness being extended through their career in some way for them. So for example, we're in a time right now where insurance companies decline coverage for people who have cancer, and these people have been paying their whole lives into these insurance companies. And then the moment they're sick, they can't afford to be sick. So we live in a world where, let's say you work at an insurance company, there's no judgment here, but if you are a sensitive soul and you can feel that pain that people are experiencing through working with this company you're at, that's a very real thing. And so I think we live in a world, especially in business, where people delegate darkness and they delegate the dirty jobs, or they don't like who they're delegating to, but they just want to get it done. And they don't realize that who you delegate to, who you hire, who you work with, in one way or another is an extension of you, who you work for. And if you like some things about what you do, but there's other things about it that you feel shame about, sadness about, if you feel like you work for a company or an entity that's putting darkness out there, your body's going to feel that. Your body's going to know that. So even if you're killing it in your job, even if you're using your skills, if you feel like you're working somewhere that is out of integrity, and you're just kind of tuning in only to your little slice of the pie, that's all good. But my guess is you're probably up at night saying, like, why is something missing? Why don't I feel totally happy or fulfilled? I like my job. I like the people. And it's like, well, if the cause that it's putting out there in the world is hurting people, your body knows that. It feels that. And so you are what you delegate, you are who you work for. And you really, I think purpose is about, and fulfillment is about realizing that you can't silo off dark things from, you can't silo off in your head things that you know are happening around you because of you, that are tied to you. And so I think fulfillment really just calls forward people into more integrity with themselves and the world. And if you really want to be happy, if you really want to feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment, that begins not only with looking at who am I and how can I contribute best? What are my best skills that I can bring? And I wrote my whole book about that. That's the U-turn. Is what are my skills and how can I contribute them? But once you ask yourself that question, it also matters where you bring them, who you're giving them to. So you can be great at what you do, but you have to make sure that you're behind a mission. And it doesn't have to mean that your core value is, impact or social justice or anything. But remember, we're made of 70% water. Our bodies, we're like cucumbers. We can feel, our cells can feel when we're not putting good out there. So.
Oh my God, that's so deep. It's so deep. And like, yeah, you took me back to when, and I didn't even know, like, I wouldn't say I was not woke at the time this happened, but took me back to my last corporate job when I realized, like, I was in sales, and I realized that what I was selling, the other people, like, I was a face. And so the people that I was selling to weren't getting what I was saying, and
Yeah.
the company was saying what they were supposed to get. And I remember at least connecting that, and I remember going to my higher up and was like, hey, like, this does not feel good to me. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want to do? He's like, well, do you want us to keep working here? Or, like, it's like that thing. And I ended up getting fired from that job because, like, I'm like, no, this isn't okay with me. Like, this
Yeah.
is, and so it's, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the pain of being fired will never match that deep gnawing pain that comes from that long-term dissatisfaction. So yeah, I think these are the
Yeah.
things to think about.
Yeah. And we learn, I feel like there's so much sacrifice,
Yeah.
or like personal sacrifice, that comes with ignoring that or numbing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just these conversations again that people don't really talk about a lot. Like, and some people will come in, I feel like me at a different stage in my life would come in and listen to something like this, and it would be like, oh, Lily, oh, Ashley, you're so lucky that you have all these other opportunities. I can't. This is what I have to do. What would
Mhm.
you say to someone like that if
Mhm.
someone's thinking about that out there?
What would I say to someone? Tell me one more time, like
Like,
that.
if someone's hearing this and they're like, well, Lily's special or Ashley's special or something like that, I don't have the ability to maybe make a change, or to even, like, maybe feels like, maybe stuck is a good word at this point, like, just feel stuck in this place of dissatisfaction. What would you say?
I would say sometimes when you feel stuck and you don't have answers, one of the worst things you could do is just grab onto something, because then you just kind of are in this whirlwind of grabbing onto things because you want some sense of grounding, but it's really a false sense of grounding. It's like marrying the wrong person just because you want to have a partnership. And so I would say, if you're feeling really lost or stuck, remember the only thing stuck is your thinking. Ask yourself, what am I thinking about my life that's keeping me feeling so powerless? And secondly, do I need some time to just percolate? Because, transitions are very real, and it takes time to kind of swim from one lily pad to the next. There's that in between, and there's a dignity to that. And people aren't really willing to allow themselves that dignity. And it's so important. So I would say, for anyone who's feeling stuck, ask yourself, like, how can I surrender into this transition? How can I allow this transition to just percolate? These are some questions that I think are really powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and give like, yeah, I've learned that too. Even as I'm, growing my business, it's just be so like so compassionate and kind with myself in this like messy middle of, maybe things change, like you were talking about, like things change all the time. It may not, I'm open now to it may not looking like for me personally, like my business may not look exactly like in the end what I think it should. But I'm also open now and have a little bit more, I guess, like internal like awareness, maybe internal regulation, as far as nervous system regulation goes, where now I'm open to change and taking care of myself and my bills, as well is important, right? So it's like this balance of all everything that you're saying, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it's a really quickly evolving world that we live in. Every, 5 years, one of your core skill sets will become obsolete in today's world. 15% of job titles in the next 10 years don't exist yet. So we're living in a time of quick change, and that could be really paralyzing for some of us. But I think that's actually quite inspiring, because what it means is that there's always new. And just like Clarissa Estes writes in Women Who Run with Wolves, we live in a life cycle, so at any given time, you're either in creation where you're making something, or you're in maintenance where you're keeping it alive, or you're in destruction. It's
Mhm.
life, death, life. And the cool thing about destruction, the cool thing about being stuck, is you're around the corner from life again.
Mm.
You don't just stay stuck unless you pick that. Some people, I think of my grandma. She was a very religious woman, and she was religious to a point where when she had cancer, she just thought that, she didn't have to do anything and that she would be healed. Um, and so she allowed herself to stay sick and had beliefs that, something would happen. And that caused her destruction, that caused her death in my life. And had she said, okay, I'm going through destruction, what can I do with my body in the world? How can I be in my body and be in this human world and do something about it? Maybe she'd still be here today. So I think, destruction truly stays that way only when you choose to stay in it. I think a lot of the times there's new, and the work about around that is just a surrender. I have seen so much in the business world, especially as an entrepreneur, whether it's like sexual harassment or copyright lawyers who are trying to sue you over nothing, like you didn't even violate a copyright and they're trying to get money, or the ambulance chasing you. There's just some weird stuff in the corporate world. And I have had to surrender as I keep growing my brand and my name and my business and my impact. I've had to surrender so deeply, because the more exposure I make of myself, and I don't really have a desire to be famous or anything like that. I just have a desire to make an impact. And
Mhm.
if like putting my brand out there in a big way is the way I have to do it, I will. And the higher I climb, the more people come and grab at my ankles in a negative way and in a positive way.
Mhm.
And I have had to practice such deep surrender, such deep trust of life. And acceptance is not resignation. Like accepting something doesn't mean you're just like keeling over. And so for me, part of being in destruction in life has been looking at these destructive moments, looking at these painful moments, and saying to myself, how can I make art of this? How can I surrender to this? How can I move forward and not let this keep me on the sidelines of my life?
Mhm. Yeah, wow. When you were talking about that, maintenance, destruction, and what was the other one?
Creation, maintenance, and destruction.
Creation, maintenance, and destruction. Yeah, I got body chills, so that always tells me that is right for me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Oh, um, I'd love to talk about um the steps to figuring out what you really want. And I thought this question was interesting because that is one of the main things that I've learned. We were talking about kind of why I'm here. It's more on the love and relationship side of things. But for me to go from semi awake of like knowing what I don't want and then getting to what I did want was a major, major gap that I had to fill. And that's what I feel, I'm sure that's what you do with your clients. It's what I do with my clients too. Um, it's very interesting because like, codependency and, maybe even in jobs, going down this path of like just denying what it is that you really want, or denying what your true feelings are, all of that stuff. I feel like you just start to like just kind of get numb to that. Like you don't even know what you want anymore. So I love this question. Like, how do you figure out what you really do want? Because that was the really one of the hardest things, to be very explicit about like what it is that I do want. How do I want to feel? How do I want to be communicated with? All of that things, and I think people talk about too in jobs. Well, what do you want to do? What lights you up? All this stuff. So I know this is going to open up a lot of things for you. So take as much time as you want, but like all these catchphrases too about job and purpose and all this stuff. I'd love for you to talk about that as well. I know it's a lot.
Okay, well, so if you could summarize like in one, please just refresh me a little bit.
Let's start with how steps to figure out what you really want.
Yeah, I would say the first step is just to do a self audit, which I always talk about, because you can't really figure out what to ask for or what you need without looking at where you actually are. We live in a world where addiction is really prevalent. Like I lost a sibling from addiction. I actually have a dear good friend of mine who lost her sibling from addiction this week.
Mm.
And, you know, you can't really change your life unless you take an honest look about where your life is. I used to be so irresponsible with money, and no matter how much I made, it was never enough because I'd always spend it. I was always over investing in my company, never keeping enough for myself, all of these different habits that I had. And it wasn't until I really looked at my numbers, really looked at my revenue. This is the numbers coming in. These are the investments going out. Okay, based on the numbers, this amount can't go out. So I have to start making some decisions. It sounds very simple, but there was a long time where I was letting my decisions be emotional, like I deserve this, or I want to invest in this YouTube channel or this TikTok channel or whatever, without saying like, what are my numbers? It's not an emotional thing. And so I think if you can become a witness to your life and just take a look and ask yourself, what is going on here that is translating into this unhappiness? Where am I at in these different areas of my life? Where am I at mentally? What's my relationship like with myself? What are my thoughts like? Where am I at spiritually? Like, am I growing at a rate that I want to grow at? Am I missing something? Where am I at in my love life? What's my relationships like? What's my dating like? Where am I at in my career? Where am I at my money, my family, like my fitness, my wellness? Like looking at all these core pillars of your life and auditing yourself. Like rate yourself 1 through 10 of how satisfied you are with it. And why isn't it a 10? Look at what's missing. And what's your part in those things that are missing? Can you be honest with yourself about how you're co-creating these things that are missing for you? So I think just all your success really starts with that self-audit.
I love that. Yeah, I say that too. Yeah, look at your patterns as information. That's what I say. So yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. What are these things that we hear in the marketplace, like catchphrases that really just don't work, and why? Like follow your passion, or there's another one that you said too that was really eye-opening. Why don't those work when we're talking about job and transitioning?
Why doesn't what work?
Like these catchphrases,
Oh yeah.
like
Yeah.
follow
Yeah.
your passion, that type
Yeah.
of thing. What's wrong
Yeah.
with those and what's better?
Yeah, I mean, I think that your passion, there's way too many artists out there that have made work out of their art and they're in a lot of pain over that, like, and so I would say, being having passion towards something doesn't mean that you have talent towards it. And so I would say, yes, there's a lot to be said around nature versus nurture. There's a lot of athletes out there. There's some that were born athletes and some that earned it. They worked for it, and some in between. So you can hustle for anything you want. But I think when you follow your passion, you're not really calculating your skills. I'm passionate about politics, but I'm really not meant to be a politician. Love massages, but would be a horrible masseuse. Love cupcakes, not meant to be a chef. There's a big difference between being a consumer of something, someone who enjoys something, and being a producer of that thing in your career. I'm not meant to produce cupcakes or massages or any of these things. So I think that tread of thinking of I'm passionate about this, so I'm going to go do that thing is really missing the core element of talent and knack and skill. And those are the things that make something feel like you can access a flow state when you actually have a natural
Mm,
gift for it.
yeah, got you. I'm looking real quick. There's another one that you said in the intro. Follow your passion and do what you love, or a one-way ticket to nowhere. Same idea with do what you love.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say um, it's subjective, right? Like do what you love. On one side, if it's a passion, like I love painting nails or something, that's an interest that I have. I think if you love something because it's a part of who you are and how you have skills, that's different. So, I love speaking because I'm a communicator. That's who I am. Um, I love, you know, arts and crafts, but I don't have a knack for them. So I think it's kind of back to that same idea of like, how is the person looking at it?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And yeah, the whole, what I've learned too is all that stuff, all those little quips and little, like you're saying, catchphrases. Sometimes they don't work for us. And what you're talking about is completely true. Because that is what we were told. We're like, follow your passion, do what you love what you do. And then there's that look of what you're talking about. Like, is that really it? Like, is this what I love? Meh, I don't know. What aspects do I love about this or what have you? But yeah, super important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Okay. I'm so curious. Are you open to sharing kind of how you got here and your story? And because, like I said, this book did not feel like a career book until like towards the end. Like it was more of
Yeah.
like, you talked a lot about trauma. And if I'm real, like completely honest, it did trigger a traumatic memory for me that had been dormant for a while. And
Mm,
I had to do what I needed to do to like, go to my support
yeah.
and process that and all that stuff. Um, so thank you for talking about this in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to do, obviously, like you and I are both on that level, but would you mind kind of opening your story up to the audience and kind of how you got here? That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've always been a pretty sensitive soul, and a loving heart. And was, I think, a little overstimulated as a kid because I was super hyper. My mom used to take me to parties and I would run into the pool, but I didn't know how to swim. Like I was just out of control in my own
Mm,
body. And I think it was because as a kid, I just felt a lot. And so the things that made sense for me was like poetry and the arts. So one thing that calmed me down when I was 6, 7, 8, which at the time had a lot going on in my life. I had a sister with a drug addiction, someone I knew who molested me. It
mhm,
was like so many different things happened that I couldn't make sense of. And the one thing that made sense for me was poetry. So I would sit on a hammock and read Shel Silverstein religiously every day. I loved writing assignments in school. And so writing really just became a part of who I was and where I'm gifted. And I always wanted to write a book, and it never felt really real for me. And if there's anything I've learned in my career, it's that who you surround yourself with is who you're going to become in some way or another. And so I started surrounding myself with other communicators like me. I started making friends with people who loved writing like I did. And suddenly getting a book deal became normal in that community.
mhm.
Like suddenly it was like everybody was getting a book deal, and it just kind of felt like they were stopping at, the sandwich shop to pick up a sandwich, but it was a book deal. So it's like, I think that there was this knowing in me my whole life that I wanted to write, I wanted to share. And it wasn't until I really put myself out there for life that I had a story to tell. So in college, everybody was doing the whole follow your passion thing. I was really passionate about government, politics, France. I speak French, I'm bilingual. And so I studied it because I just didn't really know what else to do,
Yep.
or where else to go. I mean, it's really insane that we have to, choose any sort of path at 18 or 19 when we
Mhm.
know nothing about what's really out there. We haven't experienced anything.
Yeah. And someone else
Um,
pay for it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and then you got to pay crazy amount to go study something you're not so sure about. But I studied government. I saw 9/11 happen in high school and thought, I want to solve this. I want to help. And what a good way for me to feel a sense of purpose. And went into counterterrorism, went to grad school, learned languages, and realized like whoa, this is a core value issue. I'm way too sensitive for this.
Mm,
And that's kind of how I learned there's two elements to a good career. One is skill, and the second is values. So if you're working in something you're passionate about, but it's not backed by your skills that are natural for you, and it's not supported by your values, meaning if you value, health and you're working 120 hours a week, your work is violating a core value, and it's pretty impossible to be happy about your work, no matter how much you like it, no matter how much you're good at it, if you value something that conflicts with it. So, getting clear on what are those top 5 non-negotiable values were really huge for me.
mm-hmm.
And I started helping people job hunting because I was so good at talking to people, and all my friends in the recession were jobless. And I just started telling them, here's how, let's rewrite your resume. 'Cause resume writing was just another form of writing for me.
Mm,
And really, really enjoyed it, and started helping people get job offers, and eventually started charging for it, which turned into my online programs, my podcast, my book, and everything. But I would say my book and my podcast are really where all my soul is.
mm,
And everything else that I do kind of feels businessy. Like, I love my courses from a standpoint, I think the content's awesome. But do I want to be like doing a monkey dance with digital marketing to like lead generate for my courses and do all of these marketing hustles for it? Not really. I'm more of
mm-hmm.
an artist than a businesswoman. So I've just had to make sure that 70% of my time is being an artist so that I can have that fulfillment.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're here and you're using all your skills and your values. It's so similar. It's interesting because it's so validating in a way because it's so similar to my path as well. So
Mm,
that's awesome.
mm.
Um, so I'm gonna maybe take some time to close up a little bit. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think is important about what you do, why it's important, anything that we missed?
You asked such great questions. I really have nothing. I mean, I could always talk about anything, but I
Yeah.
just did such a great job asking me questions.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, thank you. This is so important. Again, like I've never, it's very rare that I see someone like you that combines all of this like really internal, directional, awareness, like you're talking about your, like the soul led, I think you call it goal line versus soul line,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, like me for decades, and I probably a lot of people listening, like for decades was going for the goal line. Um, and I think, I don't know if you think that's true, but for me, it's like going for the soul line with a goal in mind, or it's like this balance of the in between, maybe. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm. Mhm. I do think that everything you do, especially if you love what you do and you're being who you are, has a cost of admission. Like everything kind of has a tax, so to speak. So,
Mhm.
like I was just saying, like I love my podcast and my book, but one way that my company monetizes is through courses. So what I've done to feel good about it is I know that the courses are really good, but
Mhm.
despite not enjoying the process of selling them and all of the marketing around that.
Mhm.
So it's like that's the tax for me, is like I want to have this business because I love putting art out in the world, and the business side has to be really tight. And so I think that's something that I've kind of navigated with myself, of like really getting that, I don't have to, I think there's too much pressure in loving everything you do. I don't think that's real. I don't think that's
Yeah.
human. I don't think that gives
Yes.
character. So I think you have to love most of what you do, or like most of what you do, and be
Same.
who you are, and improve and grow.
Yeah. You use 70/30. I use 80/20, but most of the
Yeah.
time it is even 80/20 if I'm real, but that's my goal line.
Yeah, exactly. Fair. Everybody can make their own rules.
Yeah, for real. So what are you working on right now? And where can people find you and follow your journey and all your great courses and
Yeah.
offerings?
Thank you. What am I working on right now? I've been booking a lot of speaking now that the pandemic is kind of shifting and
Mhm.
normalizing in a way, which has been really fun. I go to companies, I go to organizations, and I talk about how you can discover what your best skills are and be more of you at work. And that's been really fun to see companies take an
That's
interest in
nice.
that, like
Yeah,
instead of losing talent, like helping the talent see where they belong at the company, which is cool.
that is the shift though. Sorry to interrupt you. Do you feel
Yeah,
it like, is that a monumental shift that's
I think
happening? The great resignation because of COVID and stuff?
The Great Resignation to me is the most obvious thing. And I've been on so many different news segments. So I try not to sound like this egomaniac being like, what do you mean the Great Resignation is a mystery? Like the majority of the workforce was disengaged before the pandemic.
Truth.
Then you put them at home with no socializing and had them work an average hour per day extra instead of commuting. So they basically added a part-time job of a job they were already disengaged in, at least the majority was. And you're wondering why everybody's leaving and trying to, not do the things they don't love. So I think
Mm,
it's just a call forward for employers to say, like, okay, you can't
yes.
burn people out, you can't spread them thin. Who invented the 40-hour work week anyway?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I just don't know where that even came from.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry to interrupt you. I had to put
No,
that
no,
in
no.
there. But okay, so courses coming out,
Oh,
any
that's right.
yeah.
So my book is available everywhere books are sold. It's called U-Turn, YOU, 2 words. Get unstuck, discover your direction, design your dream career. It's bright yellow. You can't miss it. On my podcast, same thing. It's called the U-Turn podcast, 2 words, U-Turn. And it's a show every single week to elevate your mindset and work in love. I'm really proud of it. And the guest really, I've been doing a lot of solos. I'm just really inspired by it. And yeah, I'm on Instagram. Sometimes I'm a fair weather Instagrammer. Sometimes I'm popping off on there. And other times I'm going inward and being the artist that I think I am in my heart. But yeah, I would love to hear from anyone who listens.
Yay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time, Ashley. You are amazing.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored.
Yeah, my pleasure. What a guest Ashley was to have here. I don't think that we've ever had a chance to talk about career, maybe one other time that we did, but as I mentioned, and I stand by this, I really like the way that she connected it with really deeper issues rather than just the surface. And we didn't really get to talk about this, but I think maybe it's important for me to share my experience with purpose. And I think what the most important thing that I've learned about purpose, and I do believe that I'm on purpose, and I'm helping other women to get on purpose as well through love. Um, but here's something that I want to just put this out there, so maybe you can percolate a little bit. The first thing is that there is this, I think that there's a misunderstanding about what purpose is, especially as women. I think what we've been taught or what we've been told is purpose is what we do. And I had to learn the hard way that that was wrong. What I have learned so far in my journey, which of course I share very candidly here with you, dear listener, is that purpose isn't about what I do, but it's about how I feel. So if whatever I'm doing can contribute to the way that I feel inside myself, as I mentioned with Ashley, I realized that I was loving, what did I say? Caring, loving, and kind. And that was true. And what happened through my development, especially through my career, and as you listen to me now, is that I had always really been that way. But for some reason, well, I know lots of reasons actually, I was taught that that wasn't good enough to make money. And I think that ideally, this is not from Ashley. I don't think actually she would agree with this, but for me, the way that I am going forward with my purpose is that it is actually a way for me to be fulfilled in a lot of areas of my life. It's helping me create income. It's helping me with again, being on purpose is really helping a lot of women and creating that impact as well. So what I think maybe to think about after you close this up and finish listening to the show is, for me, again, it wasn't about purpose, is not about what I do, but it's about how I feel. And I learned that from one of my mentors. And what I also learned, my top two ways that I want to feel is connected and loved. And so what I try to do with whatever I'm doing in my life, like you're listening to it, your my businesses that I run, everything, my relationships that I have, when I'm a guest on other podcasts, I have to run this through the filter of connection and love. and loving, caring, and kind. And if it doesn't hit those points and it's not the way that I want to feel inside, then I know that something's off. And what's off is not about me, but it's about what I'm doing and spending my time doing. Sometimes it can be a reframe. Sometimes it could be a reframe. If I'm doing something that I really don't like to do, like Ashley was mentioning, she doesn't really like the sales and marketing. And again, we didn't really get into this, but then it would be, how can I create this? If it's something that I have to do, how can I reframe this into something that is in my experience, and for me, not, this may not be for you, but for me, how can I make this more connected? How can I make this feel more connected? How could I make this feel like I'm giving love, or I'm receiving love? And so just a little bit of a reframe, not something that we talked about, but definitely something that I've learned in my journey. And I don't think that this is explicitly talked about that much. So I thought that that was important. But I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ashley. I really enjoyed her perspective, and her book really, really was eye-opening to me. And one of the first times I've ever read about career development in maybe a little bit more of a trauma-informed way. So I thought it was great. She shared a lot of great personal anecdotes. And as I mentioned, there was a part that really was triggering to me, and I had to stop reading the book and do what I needed to do to heal and be with that experience. So I really hope you enjoyed the show. And I really just want to say, my friend, I love you. Thank you for being here. Always grateful, always lucky, always on purpose. I'm connected with you, even though you can't see me and I don't know you. And I do love you no matter what. See you next time.